Hey
Yeah,
man, hey you excited for this one? All right, all right.
I'm excited, man.
Man, let me do the the infamous intro. Welcome to another episode and to our season finale of Underdogs into Winners. I am your host, Ahira Foster. Today, I have with me, as always, my good friend, co-founder, and co-host of A Game, Adi. It's good to talk to you, man. It's good to see you again. It's been a
Yes,
while.
sir. Hello, and then update, guys. We have the clean-shaven Ahira Foster. He forgot to mention that. I just had to shout that out, just so the people are watching.
It's growing back, man. I didn't like it. I look too much like Mr. Foster, my dad.
Oh man, it's the identity crisis, man. That's a constant struggle in life. Yes,
It's
sir,
growing back.
but
It's growing back slowly. But I'm gonna look like you in about a week.
sounds good. Sounds good. This is the art right here, man. The maintaining is an art.
All right, man. So,
But who do we have on, man? Talk to
hey,
me. Who's our special guest?
our special guest is someone that I've heard a lot about her story. Coaching, very involved with the One Sultan community. She's an incoming BLP associate and she lives out in Germany. And she's tuning in with us from Europe right now. I'd like to introduce you to Bassant. #Bassant Blast.
All right, let's bring her on.
Hello,
Bassant.
How you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
We're good. We're technically here in the States on Pacific time. We're waking up. So what time is it in Germany right now?
It is 8 p.m. I am ready to wind down. But yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy with the time difference, right? But we appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you, being with us here today. And we're just excited for you to tell us your story and just really, help people understand, our audience understand how to break into tech and create their own career opportunities.
Yeah, love that. That's what we're all about here.
Yes, ma'am. So Adi, start us off with the first question.
Let's do it. So yeah, Bassant, before Bassant Blast, before, the LinkedIn famous, before everything, talk to us about what was Bassant like growing up. Were you like the troublemaker or did you keep to yourself or just talk to us. Let us know what you were like.
Yeah, I love this question because no one actually asks me about me sometimes. So it's always nice to have those kinds of questions. When I was growing up, I was always making things. I'm an only child and I was very close with my parents. And they're also very creative people. So we were always building roller coasters, just making things all the time around the house. It's very energetic. I was always a bit more on the quiet side, a bit more introverted. A lot of people, LinkedIn famous, they look at me and say like, whoa, you must be so outgoing and all of that. But I'm very introverted and a lot more on the quiet side. And that's totally okay if you're like that as well. And yeah, I just grew up with the mentality of whatever it is I can think of, I can make it. So growing up, I remember in high school, since I was a bit more on the quiet side, people didn't expect me to be like a good like speaker and all. And just second, I was just like, why don't I run for student council treasurer? I'm not like popular or anything, but I think I could do it. And I just went on stage and I just rapped and I threw money in the air and it was wild. And yeah, after that,
you made it rain.
Yeah, I made it rain. I remember in high school, at the end of the speech, I was like, "Look at me now, look at me now."
No way.
This sounds my new
and
favorite
I just
person.
dropped the mic and I just left.
Adi, she dropped the mic on them too. Adi, you've been demoted, bro.
Hey, that's well deserved. Hey, I can't top that. Is there any video footage? Like we if there's any video, you got to show us offline. Like that's some GOAT material.
I believe there is. I'll ask my mom about it, but it was definitely filmed. But yeah, whenever I just thought of anything, I would just do it. And I always just encourage whoever I'm working with or just my network in general is if you can think of it, you can do it because it's popped in there for a reason. And I just love creating things like videos, and that's all translated to my current journey of just creating videos on YouTube and LinkedIn and just creating content and all. And it was just like a pathway that just started from when I was younger.
Yeah. So my thing is like, you're huge on creativity, right? Where did you get that from? Was it from your parents, someone that was real close to you that, influenced your creativity aspect of yourself?
Yeah, it was my mom. I think she's a very creative person and she always thinks up things like for my projects at school and all that. She would just make them and I just saw that happen. And I think my dad in general, I come from an immigrant family. We had to get really creative with how we made money or how we went about our problems and all of that. So I think those two perspectives really helped me growing up. It created that kind of hardworking aspect of me, but also the problem solving and, there must be another way of doing things as opposed to like the normal route. Yeah.
Of course. Go ahead, Adi.
Yeah, no, I like that you once you mentioned that. I think, kind of being an immigrant, like kind of having that descent too, it's like it's perspective, right? And I think it's like kind of there's a lot of tough love lessons and kind of just, that grit and that hard work is really taught through your parents. And so I totally relate to that. So I'm glad to see that, that's translated for you really well. So yeah, kind of just moving along, right? So, after making it rain in high school, making your presence felt, I think the biggest thing, I think for like young adults is college, right? And that whole process. So, talk to us a little bit more about kind of like, what went into the process of you trying to figure out what did you want to do and like, where did you want to go? And kind of like, what were like some of the factors that you really accounted for in that decision?
Yeah, I did not think my decision through. That's kind of like what I really want to put through on the table. I didn't think about it very much, which taught me a lot about decision making and what I need to I need to do a lot of research before I deep dive into something. But essentially, senior year, I was a mess. I was like, I want to be a marine biologist. I want to go into art school. I want to do this. I want to do that. So I had a lot of interests. And I think a lot of young adults, whether it's career related or, for college, if you have a lot of interests, it's really hard to narrow it down. But I did end up getting an art school scholarship actually, and I almost ended up in art school. But I just realized it's very important to think about things from a demand and supply perspective. Sure, art is in supply with me, but it's not in demand, unfortunately, in terms of an industry like demand in general. So I thought like maybe I should go into something similar to art where I can incorporate my creativity, but also it's in demand heavily, like in business and all. So I went into marketing because I love selling. Essentially, me doing speaking like gigs, and I ended up doing stand up comedy at the end of school because of that initial like speaking gig as well. I just love selling myself, and I love creating advertisements and like how people can sell themselves and all. So that's where I went with the marketing route. Then it started to be like, where should I go for college? Or like what university options are open for me? And mostly I was thinking about like the traditional route. I went to an American school actually in Saudi Arabia. So I was thinking like then I have to go to the States or Canada. That's what everybody does. But coming from an immigrant background, and if you're going to college in the US out of state, it's so expensive. And if you're an international student, it's even worse. So I was thinking like, can I go about this in a different way where I'll still get like a good education, but also I won't like go out of college full of debt. And that's where I started looking at Europe, because Europe has free education, really good quality of life, really good quality education as well. And my senior year of college, I also went to a conference in Ireland, and it was the first time I got to see like trees and like clouds and all kinds of nature and just a whole new world outside of like my little sandbox. That's what we call Saudi. And I just fell in love with Europe, and I needed to come here for university, and that's what ended up happening. I came to Germany, very like doe-eyed and very excited, not thinking much of it. And that's where I mentioned like I didn't do much research. I didn't think a language barrier was a thing because I grew up like speaking several. And that's kind of like where culture shock and a whole other kind of story happened. But yeah, that's essentially how I made my decision.
Okay, I have a lot of different things as questions to add from that, what you just told us, right? So,
Yeah.
you're saying that you're an introvert, right? And a little bit quiet on the quiet side. But you're doing these speaking engagements, going up on stage, making it rain. You said you did stand-up comedy. How did you develop the confidence to, do stand-up comedy and then really, put yourself out there and sell yourself?
Yeah, in being an introvert, I think a big misconception is if you're introverted, it means you're shy and you're inconfident and all of these things. Being an introvert just means that you gain your energy from being by yourself most of the time. So it's draining for you to be around other people. That doesn't mean you don't like it. It just tires you out. You prefer being by yourself more. So I noticed that these things do tire me out, especially with my career coaching work. Coaching does tire me out. It's just a matter of thinking of like your strengths and what, not a weakness, but if this does tire you out, how can you incorporate a schedule where you are still taking care of yourself and you're taking time off? But you could be extroverted and shy and introverted and very confident. I just happen to be very confident.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of like where you get your energy from. And I get my energy by being by myself. I hope that answers your question.
No, that definitely answers the question because I actually, I love communications, public speaking, all that, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I love for you to be able to explain to folks is that the difference between extrovert and introvert, and it's not always that misconception of, I'm shy, I want to stay to myself. You just get energy from a different area. And so I'm
Yeah.
glad that you explained it perfectly. I couldn't have done it better myself. But another part was that you were in Ireland, right? So what conference were you when you were in Ireland? And then, what was it about in that Ireland? And, because I was in Dublin too, as well, 2 years
Mm.
back. And so, that hospitality from the Irish people is one of the most humbling things you experience. What did you like about Ireland the most when you were at that conference?
Yeah, I went for a Model United Nations conference, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially a bunch of 18-year-olds going into a room and then pretending they're the United Nations. And that's the conference I went into because I wanted to experience like one of those like high school trips where you go out with your friends to a different country and all. And yeah, it was just a very, like you said, kind of a very humbling experience in the sense of there's so much out there that's outside of my world, the bubble I kind of grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a wonderful opportunity to meet new people, and you're so right. They're so welcoming in Ireland. I loved everybody and their like positive vibes
Yeah.
and all. I just really enjoyed it, and I thought like I could definitely live here. And the funny bit is, I actually said when I was leaving Dublin, I said like the next time I'm gonna come here, I'm going to live here. Like I'm putting that out into the world.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
And
that happens.
yeah, and no, but my new job at LinkedIn is actually in Dublin. So I'm going to be immigrating again and it's gonna be in Dublin. But
That
I put it out into the world and it happened.
That's what I loving that because I've just heard about how LinkedIn, the Dublin office is the ones that's been opening up now. Um, so
Yeah.
so that's huge. And then so going into like your job getting at LinkedIn, how's that process like? And then because reading through your articles and your LinkedIn posts, right? How many times did you apply there before you actually got the okay?
I applied once and then I got it on my second try. Yeah.
Dang, that's huge. Because like again, I understand that at LinkedIn it's a rigorous process. It's not easy. It is not easy.
Yep.
So I think we kind of jumped the gun a little bit on that. Let's retract it back because I'm just getting excited about your experience, and then at Dublin. But Adi, take us away with the next one.
Yeah, so I kind of, again, like, you figure out kind of where do you want to go to school. So you're starting school there, right? But you also have this passion for like art and creativity, right? So like kind of where along the lines did this like interest for technology come about? Was it like, a certain class, just your classmates are kind of gravitating that way, or kind of like, yeah, talk to us about where did the interest in technology really came about?
Absolutely. So we cannot kind of ignore the fact that the tech industry is pretty booming, and especially if you're an international or something of that nature, it is helpful if you get into the tech industry. So that is what kind of sparked my interest. And I see a lot of people on LinkedIn when other people are speaking about like, Google or LinkedIn or all these things. They say like those are not the only companies in the world. And I definitely agree. There's more opportunities out there that are not tech industry related. But if you're a foreigner, an immigrant, all these things, that's kind of sometimes your only opportunity sometimes to get sponsorship or all these things. So that's essentially what opened my like vision into, oh, this seems like very interesting. And I ended up in college getting an internship at Intel. I actually got rejected like 200 times over because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just sending out applications and I did get lucky, to be honest with you, and I landed an opportunity there in marketing. And they were doing so many campaigns for people in Africa, specifically in Nigeria and Egypt at the time when I was there. And it was called the First Time Buyer Campaign. And they were creating campaigns for people in those countries to buy their first laptop for school or work. And the campaigns were for radio, specifically in Egypt, where I'm from. And I just loved it so much that they were creating an impact in a country as opposed to just trying to sell a product. They were really looking out for people and really creating change. And I just realized at that moment, like, that's what I want to do. I want to create or like help businesses specifically in Egypt and across the Middle East region and Africa if possible. and just work with that so I can create economic opportunity for my country. And I noticed that in the tech industry, that's how I would do that. I researched, I was like, would this be possible in like consulting in Europe or anything of that nature? And I just couldn't seem to find something like that except in technology. And that's what sparked my interest. I wanted to create economic change more than anything for my country because my heart is there, regardless of whether I'm there or not. And that's why I just started this path. I wanted to make sure this was what I did. And I get so much for fulfillment from just thinking about the work I'm going to be doing at LinkedIn, which will be here, specifically working with businesses in the Middle East. So yeah, that's what sparked my interest and all.
That's awesome. And with that, right, let's take a step back. And so you talked about, the 200 application process, and that in itself, landing at Intel is not an easy feat because, I think big tech, it's a global competition, right? I think with being a global economy. So like kind of how did you manage your mental game? What I mean with that is like, rejection, it's inevitable to some point, but it's like, how did you like kind of just manage your emotions and kind of just, stay the course? Like kind of, especially now, right? I think with COVID and kind of things going on, it's a lot of college students and kind of professionals are trying to, figure out their next move. And it is a challenging time, but like, kind of like, how did you go about it? Kind of what advice would you have for those who are like in a similar position?
Yeah, rejection was never a problem for me in the sense of, when I ran for, like, let's take it back to me in high school, when I ran for student council treasurer, what sparked that initial interest and the kind of drive for me to do that was because a teacher came up to me and told me, like, I don't think you're a leader. I don't think you have what it takes to do much. And I was just like, excuse you, I will do it then. And I just went up there and I won. So I like that because it drives you to do something that you didn't think of at the beginning. So if someone tells you no, it's like, oh, I can do it. I know I can. I'll just try again. And it's just a matter of taking whatever it is that if you failed, it's a lesson. That's more what I always focus on. In those 200 applications, I learned so much about how to sell myself. Every new application was kind of like a like a level up of my resume or a level up of how I could sell myself. Or it was just I definitely can see my pathway throughout those 200 applications. So everything was just me better understanding recruitment. And because of those 200 rejections, I only got a few rejections when I was looking for full-time roles. So I went from 200 applications to like 20 or 30. So it was just so much growth. And that's why I always love to see. It's not a matter of like you getting an opportunity right away. It's just about the growth mentality. You're not going to know how recruitment works until you actually try it. And I think, unfortunately, in college, students always think like, instant gratification. I will just do something and I'll just get the end product because that's what school teaches you. Unfortunately, if you put in 50 hours of study time, you'll get like a B. If you put in more, you'll get this much, etc. It's just a very like A to B process. But then you go out into the real world and you can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G instead of just A and B like before. And it's still not enough because the interviewer had a bad day, let's say. So much out of it is like out of your control completely. And it's a matter of just focusing on what you can control and making sure you amplify that and just grow with it. And just, keep just adjusting the whole process. It's tough. It's definitely tough, but it needs to be looked at as growth.
I like your mindset. I really do. I like that your mentality. Like it's not like something you learn through this whole process. Not win or lose. You win or learn. And how do you take that to the next level each time? You learn something different. And you're at age 21 right now, 22.
I'm 23.
23. Okay, so you're 23 years old, and you learned so much in that time. Whether it's through internship now, solidifying your full-time role, and I think that's extremely important. And it's not. I'm not saying just like ahead of the game for yourself, but it's that's an important thing. I'm glad that you were able to learn that, and you take that on because now you take that on for your own career coaching and everything that you do. So kudos to you for that because it's there's sometimes it takes people a while to even learn that.
Thank you.
For sure. And then so with that being said, right now, how do you keep that mentality though? Like each and every time when you got that rejection, like I think we're talking about the confidence that you said a teacher said like I don't think you have what it takes to be a leader. and you want to prove someone wrong. Like, how do you stay at your head afloat? Because for sometimes that's really nerve-wracking right there.
A few things I do. First, I think very factually about myself. It's so normal to think emotionally about your capabilities, but it's just very important to push past that and think factually.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, I think I'm a good worker, it's no, I've created this change. I worked on this project. I achieved this grade. Because when you think factually, no one can say no to you. It's a fact. No one can take that away from you, as opposed to an emotional thing that you think about yourself. So whenever I feel, down or, imposter syndrome kicks in, as it does with everyone, I just start thinking factually. I write things down. I write like a list of all the things that I think I have, like all the things I've accomplished, everything that I have, accomplished. And then that just helps my confidence a lot more because, like I said, no one can take those facts away from you. They're on paper, they're just there. The second thing is I have a very great support system. My parents are incredibly supportive, and they just always encourage me to do the crazy thing. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that, which is why I always, post content, speak to people, make sure I'm that for other people. But it's just so important to have people who uplift you rather than push you down. Because it's so easy to have people around you actually that push you down. I've come to realize it's just very, very easy to have negative people in your life. But you need to find those few gems that really treat you well and uplift you and remind you of your accomplishments when you're not thinking factually, because that makes like so much of a difference. Um, the third thing and the final thing I would say is, have a purpose, have something that you're working towards. I think when you are losing sight of why you're doing things is when you start to kind of crumble and fall apart, unfortunately. I am trying to be a representative for my minority group because there's not a lot of women from my community doing the work we do, or just not a lot of people from my community at all, whether they're women or not. But um, I I know why I'm doing this. So whenever I stumble or whenever I'm overwhelmed or whenever, anything negative happens, I have my eye on my goal. I know that I need to accomplish it no matter what stands in my way. And when you have that, you get so much power. Like I remember when I got rejected from, Google, Facebook, you name it, when I was looking for full time before I, graduated. But, I wanted to make sure my community had a representative in like one of these companies. So
Yeah.
I just had my eye on that moment where I could tell my community, like in a group chat, like all my friends, I'll be like, if anyone needs to get into Google, I got you. Like I will help you.
Yeah.
And when you have your eye on that kind of a goal, you get so much power from it, seriously. So yeah, those are my tips. That's how I get through my days.
Bassant, I have two things, right? One,
Yeah.
I want to show you this comment right here. This is actually from my support system here at home. My mom said, "Good for her. What a strong woman, young woman." So that's my support system. He's saying kudos to you, and that what you said definitely resonated with her. And the second thing was actually, this is actually from a Netflix show called Peaky Blinders, right? The quote, the main quote of it said, you could change who you are, but you can't change what you want." Right. And then through your whole process, you're growing, you're changing who you are, but inevitably you don't change what you want, and you know what your end goal is. So I have to say, I love how you keep your eyes on the prize, no matter what comes your way.
Yes.
That's powerful. I love it. I think clarity and intention is super key. And like to your point, as far as like the negativity, unfortunately, it's reality. But I think part of it too, I've come to realize it's like some of it is just because when you have big goals and dreams, it's just a lot of times, people in your like circle or this support system, they haven't done those things. So for them, they can't see it. So it's like, it's more so like fear that's kind of projected on you. But like you said, you kind of have to just tune it out. You have to really tune it out and find people who are like going to encourage you to go do what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's very true. I've never thought about it that way, but in a sense, I think when people are not dreaming big and they find someone who's dreaming big, they're like trying to tone him down as well, like stay at our level in a way. And it's just important to believe in yourself. If you have, like I said earlier, if you can think of something, you need to do it. And you shouldn't let just someone who doesn't know much kind of like push you down as well. But yeah, definitely agree.
And talking about that, right? Again, we talk about someone who, like, your teacher said you're not a leader, to now Bassant Blast is, globally viral, right? So, like, just talk to us about kind of like, like as part of, like, the impact and like your why for pushing into tech. Kind of like, when did that turn into, like, I want to really kind of have a way to really help a lot of people out simultaneously? So, you just talk to us about, like, kind of how it formed.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think it was one aha moment when I'm on podcasts or like in general like events. But this was a long process that took a lot of, building. It was a lot of building blocks. And I would say this started, 2-3 years of building before I could launch, or, it took a long time, and it took a while of me also understanding myself. More importantly, it's so important to understand what your strengths are. So we spoke about me being an introvert, but I didn't quite understand what that would bring to the table, because I wasn't like a loud person or someone who was, very flamboyant when they walk into a room or something. No, I'm a very tiny person. If you meet me in person, I'm very short. I don't say much. I'm just, there.
Yeah.
um and I was like, most people always encourage you to need to be like super loud and all, but I just started noticing that I'm a good listener more than anything. So I remember in my one of my internships, a girl walked into like a cubicle I was sitting in, and she was like talking to me about her problems and all, and then she left and said, when I am done speaking with you, I always feel like I've just confessed at church. I just feel like I have this weight off my shoulders.
Mm.
Right. It's so important to listen to people when they're telling you about yourself, because you'll notice patterns. So I started noticing like I'm a really good listener. That's what a lot of people keep telling me. And when I started content creation in general, I was putting up book reviews. I was talking about random things. It was nothing like concrete like it is now, but it was me putting the building blocks. And I just realized that I could share so much of my journey, in terms of my job search, because it took a long time for me to find a job. And I just noticed whenever I talked about these things in a vulnerable way, no one was talking about failure. No one was talking about rejection, all these different things. And I just noticed that I was listening to people through my content in a way. And that's still like a philosophy I have in terms of my content. It needs to be in a way where people feel understood, people feel like they're not alone, all these different things. I want it to be the support system for people where they come to a safe space. Um, and one by one, it turned into kind of like me sharing my journey, my fears, what I'm struggling with in my career, all these different things. Um, and it's been 2 years of me doing this, a bit more than 2 years, and I just realized I wanted this to be a more personal experience with my community. So if they need extra support, I'm here as a coach, in the exact same way I am with my content. A good listener, a safe space, a
Right.
place where they can problem solve and just, find solutions for their problems, because most of the people I work with, unfortunately, do not have a support system. And I'm happy to be there for them in that sense, where, they have someone who can, push them forward and also like cheer them on. And I love my work a lot. Like it fulfills me so much that I get to create impact in this sense through my failure. I have not started my full time role yet. This has all been built on just my rejections and failure, which
Yeah.
I think says a lot about what you can do with like, the negative aspects of things.
We actually have a comment from one of our audience members. Shout out to Sis Maria Vega. Self-awareness is key, right? And then so you said something about self-awareness and then kind of listening to yourself and understanding yourself. How did you adapt that about self-awareness and really truly listening and understanding? Because sometimes, like, I'll say this one as well, right? I've heard that we listen to respond, but we don't listen to understand. So, how do you, try to listen to understand, and then from others, so from what they're currently in, and then your self-awareness as well?
Yeah, self-awareness is tough and something I'm still practicing. I think very recently I've only come to realize, for example, that I don't have boundaries in
Mm,
my life or in my relationships. And that's okay. It's a matter of, it's a process of understanding yourself. You're building a relationship with yourself, and you're building a relationship with someone who's constantly changing,
yeah.
especially like, I'm 23. I've grown so much just in the last year. So, following up with that, with everything going on and trying to understand yourself, is a tough process, and it is difficult. But I think the one thing that really helps me is just a lot of empathy for other people, in the sense of, I grew up in a very international community. I had
Mm-hmm.
Korean friends, I had American friends, I had people from all over. Um, and that teaches you that usually the things people do stem from, their background, or how they view the world, or all these things. And it is very important, before you answer, while you're listening to someone, you need to keep their background and all these things in mind, because it always stems from that. And we can be judgmental and, unempathetic to people's problems. But I notice now, for example, with my Egyptian community who are moving to Germany, for example, they do a lot of weird things. And it's not because they want to do weird things. It just, we all act a certain way when we're in a different environment, or will react to things culturally as
Yeah.
well. And it's just so important to have that empathy, and to just open your worldview a bit and speak to a lot of different people, because that's when you will realize like how different we are, but also how similar we all are as well, and how we need to be empathetic and respond to people in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's essentially, it's just important to have empathy with yourself and empathy for other people.
Yeah.
And that's where self-awareness comes from. And also, you understand a lot about yourself when you look at other people as well. So I'll notice that, if someone is doing something, I'll notice it a lot more with them, and I'll say like, oh, I actually do that as well. So it's just a matter of analyzing things a lot, I would say, and just, looking at the background of things, like, why am I doing this, why are other people doing this, etc. But that's how I go about it.
That's a good point. Adi, I'll let you ask the next question, but I'm just saying, like, this is a good point about, like, you will understand a lot about yourself if you look at another person, right? And like, say like someone else's bad habits. Like, sometimes Adi calls me a lot, and I'm like, come on, bro, you talk too much. But I realize I talk too much, just like I'm doing right now. But that's just a little joke. But Adi, help us transition to the next part, man.
Yeah, so I guess the next thing we wanted to talk about was, I think, yeah, so I think now, right, because we have this time and there's part of this self-awareness, right? It's like, I think you mentioned it, how it's important to kind of, differentiate yourself, right, when it comes to like job seeking, things like that. I think it's great to see how, on LinkedIn, you have like a lot of individuals who have taken that first step of putting themselves out there, whether it's like through content creation, just interacting with folks, right? And I guess my question for you is, how do you balance like kind of following like, what other people are doing that's worked for them versus being yourself? Like you said, right? Like sometimes people like may like certain things that may work for others may not work for them, right? But if they keep on following like what's working for others, they're just not going to get the same result per se, whatever that may be, right? So when it comes to like this whole personal branding, like content creation, like kind of how do you balance, like staying with relevance as well as like, doing it your way? Because I think, that's the important part.
Yeah, no, I think if we look at just content creation in general, every specific, like, how to say, like, social media platform is always going to have a format or a way of doing things. It's a matter of having that as your base, and then moving forward with whatever it is that distinguishes yourself. So it's kind of like what I touched back on, like, I'm a good listener, I am a good storyteller, I know those are my strengths. How can I incorporate that in whatever it is I'm doing on LinkedIn, for example, if I look at other people's content? So I always say, like, try and like analyze, kind of like what we said before, everything that you are reading, and how you can turn that story, for example, into something that's a bit more relevant to you. But it's important to always analyze the platform first, and then work with it that way. um and when it comes to, job hunting, everything is very, like, this is something I always tell my audience, everything is very subjective in recruitment. And just because it worked for someone else, it's probably not going to work for you, because, maybe they live in a different country, maybe they're more senior to you, maybe they had more experience. There's so many elements that go into this. And I remember I saw this post once on LinkedIn where someone was like, don't put the word graduate in your headline, no one's going to reach out to you, and stuff like that. And I just thought to myself, and I said, when I was graduating, I put the word graduate in my headline, and a Facebook recruiter reached out to me, and that was like a big, like, process into, like, I interviewed with them. I reached the final interview just because I put that keyword in my headline. And it's just so important to try and find out what works for you first. Implement advice for sure. And, reach out to multiple people with advice. And if you notice a trend in advice, then, that's kind of solid. But don't take everything at face value and be very careful what you do in recruitment more than anything. And just, it's a long term game. You're not going to find results very quickly, especially I think right now with everything going on. It's just important to experiment and find out what works for you. And, if it doesn't work, it means something's wrong and you need to implement something new. So just keep those things in mind.
I have a question. When you first started doing like content creation, right? How were you able to hone in more on career stuff and not, other things that you first like doing book reviews and stuff like that on LinkedIn? How were you able to hone in on, specifically, career coaching?
Do you mean like me posting about my career
Yeah,
coaching?
you posting about career coaching and posting that on LinkedIn for content.
Yeah, I actually don't post much about my business, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I talk more about my own journey and my story and what I've learned or those things. I don't talk about my clients very much actually.
Right.
All of that. It's more about me and like what I've learned and how I've surpassed things. So just as an example, for example, the reason I got rejected from LinkedIn at the beginning was because I didn't get visa sponsorship. They couldn't sponsor me at the time.
Oh.
And I just speak about that a lot, like very openly. And I mention the things of like how I was able to turn that later into an offer or how I was able to surpass the whole visa sponsorship issue. And so when someone sees that, they think, okay, I can reach out to her. I'm having a similar problem. She has a form on her like profile. I'll fill it out. And then, so it's more me just sharing my story. I don't really speak about my business much actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm just trying to hone in on that because I think when it comes to content creation, it's Adi like really highlighted this a lot when it came to us in our business, right? For A game, is that we're trying to be not a generalist, you're trying to be a specialist in what we do, and so you became a big specialist with the career coaching from what you've been able to learn, and so like that's what I was trying to really understand about how you've started doing this 2-3 years ago, but you've grown a whole lot and your growth has been enormous in the past few years. So so what does the future look like now moving forward, not just from your own business, but everything that you're learning moving forward now that you have your full time and when you start that, like what does the future look like for you?
I want to reach a point of like big resilience where I'm not
Mhm.
shaken very easily. That's something I am really working on. And also a place where a lot of self-love. That's something I'm really working towards as well. Making sure that I'm holding myself with respect, treating myself well, setting boundaries for me and my work. So those are some topics that I'm really thinking about. And I think especially this year, I've let my circumstances really define me. I've had a ton of paperwork issues. I've been just in isolation. My job got postponed. I was supposed to start earlier this year. I'm
Mhm.
starting next year now. And I think it's very easy to let things define you, like your problems or things that you can't control. And I just want to work on my definition of me that doesn't involve like my circumstances or all these problems that I have waving left and right around. And yeah, I'm just working on that and I'm just working on uplifting people with me. I
Yeah.
really believe in, leaving the door open when you pass through. And also, as I rise, I lift people up with me.
Mhm.
So as I learn all these things, I will continue to share them with my community. I will continue to support my community, whether online or offline, and make sure I'm continuously creating a difference. And I hope that turns into a nonprofit someday. That's something I'm working towards. But we'll see what happens. I'm also very open. I don't know.
Well, I have to say the future is very bright, and I really have to say that as well. I think you're living proof for it as an example that you're more than just like what comes with work aspect and career aspect as well.
Yeah.
You really highlighted that a whole lot, and I think that's really important for people to really highlight for themselves. Is that you're more than what you get from as a grade and what's going to help people define you in that, and then so that's a lifelong journey to figure that out. But I'm liking that we're talking about that because I think that at a young age we all need to figure that out. That we're more than just our job. We're more than setting those boundaries from work. It's huge because sometimes you lose yourself in that work process. I think so. I've seen that so many. I've lost myself in the work process as well, and I think it's important to really define ourselves more than what more than what what's on our job title on LinkedIn or and everything like that.
I really like that. And I think especially this year, this is very prominent in the sense of, if I strip away like my community because I can't see anyone, or I strip away a job because
Yeah,
it got postponed, or I strip away all these different things that are normal, what do I have left? Even this year I couldn't go to church for a while, and I was just like, what's left of me if I can't do all these different things? And
for
I
sure.
think these things really, we highlight them and we make them a huge part of our identity because they're important. But, if we take all the hustle away, what do we have left? And I think that was a really big like eye opener for me.
Hmm.
It's something I'm working on. Like I'm a lot more than I am at work or what I do online or all these different things. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that as well.
For sure. And I have to say this, right? This is actually some of my LinkedIn fam, at the beginning of the year, it helped me highlight this when I was going through like an incident I had, right? So pillars of your well-being.
Mm,
Like you said, school and work is always going to be there, but what are the pillars that hold you up? And that is your foundation of who you are, right? And then, I challenge people to really figure that out. Was it family? I like family, growth, love, your hobbies that you love to do that helps contribute to who you are. I think that's something that, I want the audience to really figure that out for themselves. Is their pillars. And even for you, Bassant, what are your pillars? Me personally, like it hurt the fact that with all this thing going on with COVID and all these things were stripped away, like what do I have left? And have health, family, God, prayer. That's the most important thing. So that's
yeah,
something that we should really be thankful about.
yeah. It's been a weird year.
It's been super weird, super weird.
Yeah, and kind of with that, right? So, Bassant, so I think along your journey, right? Kind of like when did like you kind of run into Jonathan and like the One Salting crew, like, and kind of how did that interaction go about?
Yeah, I ran into Jonathan, of course, through LinkedIn because we were both creating content, and we started talking about a year and a half ago, I would say about, and it's so crazy. I feel like I've known him for a lot longer, specifically, and this was before Jerry joined One Salting for, and he was just so supportive and just such a giver more than anything. And he's such a huge role model to me even now. Like, how can I give more to people? How can I build a bigger community where I'm just supporting more people? Um, and the community has been so important to me. Like, I met him before my LinkedIn offer, and he just was so helpful with the entire process. And having Jerry on board, he's also like such a huge inspiration to me in terms of like mental health. And he's also comes from an immigrant background, and I just love how they also really embody, your circumstances don't define you. You could be an underdog from this school or, from this background, but we are still, capable of so much more than all of that. And yeah, he called me family the other day, and I really believe in that. We truly are a family that's making like a huge, splash in the world. Yeah, so happy to be a mentee and just part of all of this.
Yeah.
Well, definitely no.
Oh,
Or
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Adi. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say no. That's crazy that you mentioned that. It's like I ran into Jonathan around a year ago, give or take time frame, and like it feels like I've known him for like a lot longer. And no, he's always like, always even like even if you don't explicitly ask, hey, how do I do this? He's like, I would try this, try that. He's
I
always
will
like trying
tell
to
you.
put you on like game, and like he's now into fitness, so he always brags about kind of how he's getting the gains a little bit. But no,
Okay.
that's it, man. No, he's a lighthearted guy, and truly, it is a blessing to kind of have him. Someone like a sounding board as well as a One Salting crew in general, right? It's cool to see everyone do amazing things, but also kind of support you along your journey too. So
Yeah.
I actually have to ask, One Soul Team's motto is, underdogs, like underdogs into winners, as this mini series is, right? How do you take that underdog mentality and how do you, use that in your advantage?
I mean, underdog mentality can be tough. If you're an immigrant or a foreigner, or all these an international student, we look at these things as rocks that hold us down a lot of the time. I did for the longest time. I said like, all these things, these paperworks, I'll never get through all of this. But I think when you're an underdog, you get so much resilience, so much problem solving skills, so many transferable
Mm,
skills through your journey that, someone who's not an underdog will not have. I know it's so tough to think about, because it's a very long term kind of thinking, right? Short term, I want results right now, right? But through me being an underdog in my life, I've learned so much and I've evolved so much as a person. Um, and we really need to keep our like thinking into that, because though it is tough, you become such like a much more well-rounded person. And LinkedIn hired me because I'm an underdog. I'm a big believer in that, because they saw like my dedication, my resilience. That's what they were looking for in the position. So never think that these skills and the things that make you you are not important in your career or personal life. You become so much more well-rounded and just such a good candidate for positions. And you know I know it's tough and it seems like the world sometimes is just, yeah, doesn't want it to work out for you, but I always say there's better things ahead, and the process makes you evolve more than anything.
I think that's important to really embrace that underdog mentality. I really do. I think with some folks, like we don't come from entitlement. We come from backgrounds where our parents sacrificed so much for us to be in this the positions that we're in. From school, work profession, from a professional standpoint. And so again, like give a huge shout out to our parents for even sacrificing and doing that, because not just because they love us, but they want to provide for so much for us. And I think that's why we have to give it our all for them, like for real. Because we do come from those backgrounds. No, we are underdogs in our own ways. We are. And then Adi, to top it off, man, ask the key question.
Of course. Bassant, what do you do, and ultimately kind of what brings out your A game? In other words, what allows Bassant to be the best version of Bassant?
Ooh. I think more than anything, and the first thing that popped in my head was the people before me that uplift me. I know it's something external. I mean, we can touch on an internal thing in a second, but I'm a big believer in Ubuntu, which is, I am because we are. I'm a big believer that I'm here because of the work my ancestors have put in, the work my family has put in, the work my network has put in. I would not be Bassant, or I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for my community and my relationships more than anything. And, relationships are what make the world go round. And it's important as part of your A game to make sure that you have a network that uplifts you, and it's going to be so like monumental to your growth and who you end up being. So, build that community, find people that really like, uplift you. I remember in university, I could not find people who did that for me. I, for the longest time, was like, all these people are so competitive, no purpose at all, just very like, unpurposeful people, not intentional. And that brought me down, to be honest. I started not thinking of a purpose. I didn't think with intention anymore. It's so important to have people around you that uplift you. Like, it's so important. And, I just went on LinkedIn and I found that community. I crafted that place for myself where, I had purpose. I had people who made me want to work hard and didn't make me feel like, lazy, or, there's no point in doing anything. So create that community for yourself, even if you do not have it. In a digital world, it's so easy to create community and, meet up with people or find new people who are better acquainted with your like goals. That's super important. Otherwise, if it comes to an internal thing that makes me Bassant, it's just having hope. I think for the longest time, a lot of people around me did not have that hope. But when you have hope, you can really do anything. You get dedication from it, you get hard work, because you know something's going to work out. It's not, maybe not, you don't know what it is, but it's just a matter of time, right? And I think when I lost hope this year because of a number of circumstances, that's when I like lost a bit of myself. So I think what makes Bassant is having hope and just, positivity more than anything, I would say.
You put up positivity and you eventually get that back. And Bassant, like for real, that really does mean a lot for you to say that, right? And then another thing is, be where you're celebrated, not tolerated. And be where you're celebrated. That community is, you find that amongst your friends. It could be two people that you feel celebrated with, but as long as you have that sense of connectiveness, that's worth more than anything. So Bassant, I really want to say thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. Taking time. I know it's about almost 9 o'clock over there in Germany, But thank you so much for connecting with us, talking and sharing your story. It really does mean a lot. We've come a long way. This is our season 2 finale of Underdogs and the Winners, and it's so great to just hear about your story and you sharing that and highlighting so many key things that hopefully our listeners will take away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time, and I'm really appreciative of your questions. It's kind of like what I said at the beginning. Most people don't ask me about my life, so it was really refreshing, and really appreciated that. And yeah, congrats to the end of season 2. Pop champagne. What?
Definitely.
We actually get the Moet right here.
Like,
We actually got the Moet right there.
awesome. But yeah, congrats, you guys. You should be very proud of yourselves.
No, we appreciate
Thank you.
We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
And where can our audience, find you, Bassant? Like you talked about, I know LinkedIn, Bassant Blast, but I guess where else can people kind of find and connect with you too?
Yeah, so it's Bassant Shinoda. It's like written down here on LinkedIn, where you can find me. You can also find me on YouTube with Bassant Blast. I post a lot of funny videos over there, so we can get through these tough times. And it's also bassantblast@gmail.com if you do want to reach out for any particular reason, like speaking engagements or career coaching. But other than that, yeah, always happy to get a message or an email.
Man, for sure. Thanks for sharing that with us. And honestly, I have to say thanks for highlighting that side of your personality. I didn't know you did stand-up comedy. Now the fact that you made it rain, I was like, man, she could be a cool homegirl.
That really stood out to you, didn't it?
For real. No, it did for me.
Does.
Like you talked about, right, Bassant, it's like, again, I see the posts, I see what you've kind of built yourself to, right? And that's amazing. Props to you, but it's like, it's really cool to see the other side of you and get to know that side, like you mentioned. So yeah, I mean, that stuff to me, that's probably one of the best moments of the live session, to be honest.
Yeah, I love to rap. I would love to integrate that somehow into LinkedIn, but it's a bit tough.
I got an idea on that. Take key rap words highlights and then write a post about it. So just think, but we'll talk off screen about it. But just take key lyrics and then analyze it and what that means about going in career coaching, business, and that was something I was thinking about.
Well, here you could start that off yourself, man.
And I'm more of a sports guy.
For sure.
But
I'm just messing.
But to everyone that's watching this and tuning in, we really do appreciate you guys with all the support. This is actually our last live stream of 2020, and Bassant, you capped it off with a great interview. But to everyone, it really does mean a lot to have like the amount of support that we've had. We've now gotten into 205 cities, 15 countries with our podcast. So we're highlighting that throughout this interview because we've like you, Bassant, we started 2-3 years ago with this. And so it's been a long journey, but we're trying little by little. And so you highlighting your journey has been it makes us feel a lot more comfortable that we're not alone in this whole journey and trying to reach the top.
It's always a process, just to highlight that.
Yeah, it's always a process. So Bassant, signing off. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, bye.
Thank you.